Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep into global finance.
Mm-hmm.
With Nassim Taleb.
Oh, yeah, the black swan guy.
Exactly. We've got a bunch of his interviews, articles, all that. Really interesting stuff, even if you're not, a Wall Street expert.
Yeah, Taleb's all about risk and uncertainty. And what's cool is it applies to, everyone, not just the big finance people, everyday investors, too.
Totally. So we're going to cut through all the fancy jargon, right? Figure out what Taleb's warnings about, markets, the dollar, even AI, what that means for us regular folks just trying to be smart with money.
For sure. One of the first things that kind of jumps out from Taleb is this idea that markets, way more fragile than they look, even when, everything seems to be going up.
Yeah. He uses this image like a house of cards. Looks stable, but the tiniest thing could knock it down.
Right.
So picture that, right? That house of cards. What's making it so shaky, according to Taleb, I mean? What's the wind that's about to blow it over?
Well, he talks about a few things. One is how a few companies are driving so much of the growth, especially the AI companies. Everyone's crowding onto this one boat thinking it can't sink. But Taleb says that's the problem. If something happens to those AI giants, the whole market feels it.
So you're basically putting all your eggs in one basket if you're all in on those AI companies.
Yeah.
But it's not just AI, is it? Taleb talks about rising debt too, especially governments like in the U.S. and Europe.
Oh, absolutely. He says it's like climbing a mountain with a huge, heavy backpack full of debt makes the climb much harder, more likely to trip and fall. And he's specific about the kind of debt, too. Not so worried about, say, a family taking out a mortgage, but more about all that government debt. That's the stuff that can really mess up the whole economy.
Okay, so we've got this shaky market, right? Crowded onto a few AI boats, governments with these massive debt backpacks. And then to make things even more interesting, Taleb throws in geopolitics. Says recent events are shaking confidence in the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, this is where it gets real for everyday investors, especially if, they've got a lot of their savings in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Taleb points to things like, freezing those Russian assets after the Ukraine war. It's it shows how politics can undermine the dollar. It cracks the foundation of the whole system.
Wait, so holding U.S. dollars is risky now. I mean, it's the world's reserve currency. It's like saying water is dangerous all of a sudden.
Well, it's not that the dollar is going to disappear overnight or anything. It's more about the perception, If countries and the big investors start to lose faith, they'll look for other places to put their money. And that can slowly erode the dollar's power.
So a slow leak in that boat everyone's on. And where are they moving their money to? There's been talk about gold, making a comeback. Is that what Taleb's saying?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Gold's always been seen as that safe haven, especially when things are uncertain or when people lose faith in regular currencies. And we are seeing, more demand for gold from people, sure, but even from, central banks around the world.
Okay, so gold is looking a little shinier these days. But does that mean, is the dollar on its way out, completely? And if so, what are everyday investors, especially those of us in Malaysia, what should we be doing?
Well, I wouldn't, rate the dollar's obituary just yet, but Taleb's point is diversification is key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, the basket might be, the dollar itself.
So spread things out, different currencies, maybe some gold too, like we were talking about. Could be a good hedge against that slow leak in the dollar. But let's switch gears a bit. We were saying how it can make the market shaky, but it's also the hottest investment right now. Everyone's talking about it. What's Taleb's take on that?
It's interesting. He gets that AI is going to be huge, maybe even bigger than the internet was. But he says, don't just jump into the big AI companies now. He compares it to, remember the early internet? Companies like Alta Vista.
Yeah, those clunky search engines.
Right. They were king. Then Google came along and changed everything. His point is AI could be the same. New players, they could come out of nowhere, disrupt the whole thing. So betting everything on one AI company, maybe not the best idea.
So the AI landscape, it's still changing, still forming. Hard to say who the winners will be in the long run.
Exactly. Taleb's advice is be cautious, be strategic. Don't just get caught up in the hype. It might not last.
Okay, so we've got this shaky market, right? From too much focus on AI, a dollar that might be weakening, and all that debt hanging over everyone. It's a bit unsettling, to say the least. I guess that's why we're deep diving with Taleb, though. He's all about about understanding these risks. Speaking of which, how does all this affect like investors in Malaysia specifically? Does all this global stuff, does it have a direct impact on us?
Absolutely. Malaysia's economy, it's connected to everything else. So any big changes globally, we'll feel it. It's like imagine a big storm out at sea, even a little bay that seems sheltered, it still gets the waves.
So even if we're like focused on investing in Malaysian companies, we can't ignore what's happening in the rest of the world.
Right. For example, if the dollar weakens like Caleb says it might, it could affect the ringgit. A weaker dollar usually means a stronger ringgit, which, might sound good, but it can make Malaysian exports more expensive, and that hurts companies that do business overseas.
So it's a seesaw almost.
Yeah.
One currency goes up, the other goes down. And that can have a ripple effect on the whole Malaysian economy.
Exactly. And it's not just, the dollar and the ringgit. It's global events, geopolitical stuff, economic slowdowns and big economies. It all affects Malaysia. We live in a really interconnected world. Understanding that's crucial for making good investment decisions.
Okay, so we can't just, bury our heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening. We got to keep an eye on the global picture.
Yeah.
But with all this talk about fragility and uncertainty, it's almost like a minefield out there. How do we even navigate this?
Yeah.
Especially if we're not, sophisticated investors.
Well, Taleb talks a lot about building resilience in your investments, sure, but also just in your whole approach to money. He uses this idea of a barbell strategy. It might sound a little weird at first, but it's actually pretty smart.
Barbell strategy, like lifting weights at the gym.
Yeah, exactly. Think about how a barbell is. You got heavy weights on both ends, but the bar in the middle, pretty light. He says do the same thing with your investments. One end of the barbell, that's your safe zone. Conservative investments, stuff that probably won't lose much value, even if things get crazy.
So like bonds.
Yeah.
Or even just holding cash.
Right. That's your bedrock, stability, peace of mind.
Then on the other end of the barbell, that's your risk zone. Investments with more potential for growth, but also, more potential for ups and downs.
So maybe those new tech companies here in Southeast Asia, or maybe even a little bit of gold, since it's seen as a safe haven.
Exactly. But the key is the middle of the barbell, the bar connecting the two ends. Keep that light. Avoid those investments that are just, mediocre, not super safe, but not high growth either.
So don't get stuck in the middle. Make clear choices. Safety on one end, calculated risk on the other.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, this barbell strategy, it can go beyond just your investments. You need like a barbell approach to life in general? Now I'm really interested. Tell me more. So this barbell thing, it's not just about picking the right stocks and bonds, right? It's about how you approach like uncertainty in general.
Right. Think about your career, for example. You might have a stable job, pays the bills, that kind of thing. That's one end of the barbell, your secure base. But then at the same time, maybe you're working on a side hustle or learning some new skill, building a network in a totally different field. That's the other end, venturing into something with potential.
I get it. So one side is my steady 9 to 5. The other side is that passion project I'm messing around with after work.
Yeah.
The thing that could be my main gig someday. It's like hedging your bets, but with your time and energy, not just your money.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the world is, unpredictable. And having options, having different things you can rely on, it makes you more resilient, when things change unexpectedly.
That makes sense, especially with all this talk about fragile markets and those black swan events. It's not just about diversifying your investments. It's about diversifying, like, your life.
Yeah.
Your skills, your whole approach to the future.
And that brings us back to what it means to be an unsophisticated investor these days. I mean, it can be overwhelming hearing about all these global trends, all the economic theories, all the potential risks. But Taleb, he's really trying to be empowering.
How so? It honestly sounds kind of scary.
It is. But the point is, you don't have to be a financial expert to be a smart investor. The first step is just being aware, recognizing that, the financial world, it's complicated and it's always changing.
Don't just ignore it and hope for the best.
Right. Stay informed, read the news, listen to podcasts like this one, talk to people who understand this stuff. The more you understand, the better decisions you can make.
So find good sources of information and don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't get something.
Exactly. And remember, investing it's a journey. It's not about like reaching some specific destination. It's about learning and adapting as you go. Taleb, he always says, keep learning, keep updating what you know. Be open to new information.
So it's not a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
It's about staying aware of the financial landscape, how it's changing.
Absolutely. And even small steps, they can make a big difference over time. You don't have to become a day trader or financial guru overnight. Start with awareness, diversify little by little, maybe try that barbell approach, in different parts of your life.
I like that. It feels doable, even empowering. So for our listeners in Malaysia, especially the ones who might be feeling a little lost with all this, what's the one thing we can leave them with?
I'd say this. You have more control over your financial future than you might think. Understanding the basics, like we've been talking about, diversifying, staying informed, being aware of what's happening globally, and having a plan to manage risk, that's how you navigate, even when things are uncertain.
And remember, knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
The more you know about the financial world, the better equipped you'll be to make smart choices, build that resilience, not just with your money, but with your whole life.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with a final thought from Taleb. He says, the greatest threat to your well-being isn't a black swan event itself. It's your inability to cope with it. So be prepared, be adaptable, and most importantly, stay informed. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.